The wind howled across the jagged mountains of Clyra, 7, carrying a cold that cut through the thin walls of the human colony. The buildings were small and sturdy, made from metal and stone, built quickly after the first humans landed. They had hoped for a quiet life on the new planet, but the mountains held secrets that no human had tamed. Legends of creatures with glowing white scales and eyes like burning ice haunted the colony. Albino dragons, the elders called them. No human had ever seen one and lived to tell the story, until now, that is. Children huddled close to their parents as the stories were told at night. "Stay away from the mountains," the adults said, voices tight with fear. "Never go near the ice caves. The dragons wait there." Even the explorers, strong and trained, dared not enter the dragons' territory. Every footprint in the snow was measured and watched. The dragons were clever, fast, and terrifying. Their white scales made them almost invisible in the snow, and their size alone could crush a human in seconds. From the center of the colony, the buildings looked safe and quiet, but at the edges, near the base of the mountains, life was dangerous. The humans worked in fear, scanning the skies and listening for any sign of the dragons. Sensors beeped faintly, tracking movement, but no machine could capture the dragons' full power. The elders said the dragons were creatures of magic, of a world humans could never fully understand. Scientists tried to explain it with logic, with biology and energy readings, but the fear never left. Among the colony, a few humans were brave enough to move near the mountains. They built outposts and watched the icy peaks, but they never stayed long. Every day, they risked everything just to map the dragons' territory. Every night, they returned to the colony, shaken and pale, telling stories of shadows that moved faster than thought. The dragons did not roar often, but when they did, the sound split the air like a hammer breaking rock. Windows rattled, children cried, and even the strongest men could not stand the sound. One such night, a soft snow fell over the colony. The stars shone bright above the mountains, reflecting on the icy cliffs. From a distance, the mountains looked peaceful, almost inviting. But the humans knew better. The dragons were there, hiding in the snow and shadows, watching every movement of the colony below. They were patient hunters, waiting for mistakes. A broken fence, a wandering child, even a careless sound could draw them down in seconds. The colony had lost more than a few settlers over the years, some taken before anyone could scream. Still, life went on. People farmed the frozen land, built machines to mine ice and minerals, and raised families with cautious hope. They taught their children to fear the mountains, to respect the dragons, and never to go alone. But fear could not stop curiosity entirely. From the edge of the settlement, humans would sometimes see pale shapes moving in the distance, shadows larger than any animal they knew. And every time, they would shiver and look away, telling themselves it was nothing. Even the bravest explorers had rules. Never approach the dragons at night. Never make loud noises. Never show weakness. Yet, every rule came with doubt. Could humans ever truly know the dragons? Could they survive without angering them? Every story and warning was a reminder that this world was not made for humans alone. The dragons had lived here for centuries, untouched, feared, and alone. Humans had only just arrived, and the land itself seemed to warn them, "This is not your world." In the middle of the colony, a small girl named Lena watched the mountains from a window. She was only 2 years old, with bright eyes and a curious mind that no warning could stop. While adults whispered about dragons and danger, Lena wondered why no one had ever tried to befriend them. She did not know fear the way the elders did. To her, the dragons were not monsters, they were just creatures she had never met. She pointed at the distant peaks and laughed softly, imagining them flying toward her, not to harm, but to play. The parents nearby watched with nervous smiles, unsure what to do with a child who had no fear. "She's too young to understand," her mother said, brushing Lena's hair back. "The dragons could," her voice faltered. Even she did not want to finish the sentence. The stories of missing children, broken buildings, and shattered villages ran too fresh in every mind. As the night grew colder, the wind picked up again. Snow swirled like silver dust, and the mountains disappeared behind clouds and mist. Somewhere deep in the ice caves, a pale figure moved, its scales shimmering under the faint moonlight. The dragons were awake. The humans did not know it yet, but the balance between fear and courage was about to change. And at the heart of it, a small human girl watched, laughing quietly at a world that had taught her to be afraid. The colony slept, unaware that tomorrow would bring something no human had ever dared before. Fear ruled the night, but curiosity, small, quiet, and fearless, was stirring. The morning sun broke over the jagged mountains, casting pale light on the icy cliffs. The colony stirred, smoke curling from chimneys, and the children ran across the snow-covered fields. Lena, the small girl with bright eyes and fearless curiosity, woke early, as if drawn to the mountains themselves. She crawled to the edge of the settlement, where the snow met the frozen cliffs, and stared at the distant peaks. Today, she felt something different in the air, a hum, soft and deep, almost like a whisper calling her name. Her parents were busy with their morning chores, preparing food and checking equipment for the day. They often warned her not to wander near the mountains. "The dragons are dangerous," her mother said the night before. "Stay here with us." But Lena did not understand danger the way adults did. In her world, dragons were creatures of light and curiosity, not fear. She slipped past the small fence at the edge of the colony, her tiny feet leaving prints in the fresh snow. The mountains were silent at first, the only sound the wind moving through the jagged rocks. Lena climbed slowly, careful but determined, drawn by something she could not name. And then she saw it. A massive shape, larger than any human, with shimmering white scales that almost glowed in the morning light. The albino dragon stood on a ledge above her, its head turning slowly as it watched. Its eyes were pale blue, like ice itself, and Lena felt a strange warmth as they met. Every instinct the adults had warned her about screamed in the air. The dragon could crush her without effort. It could roar and destroy the small fence, the houses, even the humans in the distance. But Lena did not move back. Instead, she held out her tiny hand, as if asking for friendship. The dragon tilted its head, its nostrils flaring, and a quiet, low hum escaped from its throat. Lena giggled, her small laugh echoing off the cliffs, innocent and pure. The humans watching from afar froze in shock. Her parents had followed quickly, fearing the worst, but they kept their distance, unable to believe what they were seeing. No human had ever approached the dragons and lived. Many had tried, and many had disappeared. But here was Lena, a small human child, reaching out with curiosity instead of fear. The dragon moved slowly, its massive claws digging into the ice as it stepped closer. Each movement made the snow crack beneath its weight. Lena did not flinch. She extended her hand further, her fingers trembling slightly, but her eyes bright and steady. The dragon lowered its head, the distance between them shrinking, and Lena could see the details of its face, the soft curve of its snout, the sharp but not menacing teeth, the faint ridges along its glowing scales. Then it happened. Lena touched the dragon's snout with the tip of her finger. The dragon froze for a heartbeat, as if surprised by the gentleness of this small human. Then, slowly, it nuzzled her hand. A soft warmth radiated from its body, and Lena laughed again, a sound full of wonder and joy. The humans watching gasped. Could it be possible? Could a human, so small, so fragile, actually touch a dragon without being harmed? The dragon's eyes softened, the glow in them flickering like sunlight on ice. Lena's parents were still frozen in fear, but a new feeling grew in them, awe. They had never imagined that a human could connect with a dragon in this way. Other settlers peeked from windows, their fear mixed with curiosity. Whispers spread, she's not afraid? How is this possible? Could it really be safe? The dragon lowered its head further, letting Lena crawl closer, and she reached up to touch its glowing horn. The contact sent a shiver through her tiny body, but it was not pain, only a strange, beautiful warmth. The dragon blinked slowly, its massive body moving gently as if trying not to scare her. Lena smiled, and the dragon tilted its head, watching her with quiet intelligence. Time seemed to stop. For a moment, the mountains were silent except for the faint hum of the dragon's body and the soft wind. Humans far below watched, unable to believe their eyes. The child's courage had broken the rule that had held them in fear for so long. The dragons, terrifying and mysterious, had not attacked. Instead, they had accepted her touch. Lena's parents finally stepped forward, cautiously, keeping their distance. "Lena," her mother called softly, her voice trembling. Lena looked back but did not move. She wanted the dragon to know she meant no harm. And then, almost as if sensing her thoughts, the dragon lowered its massive head even further, letting Lena run her small hands over its face and neck. Its hum grew softer, almost like a purr, and the fear that had gripped the humans began to fade. It was a moment no human would forget. A small child had dared where the strongest settlers would not. A human had shown courage in its purest form, not through weapons or machines, but through innocence and trust. The albino dragon, feared by all, had been touched, and it had touched back. Far above, more dragons stirred in the icy caves, their glowing eyes turning toward the child. For the first time in generations, the mountains held not just fear, but the quiet spark of hope. Lena did not know it yet, but her small act of courage had begun to change everything. The colony below had watched in shock, and the dragons had watched in curiosity. A new day was coming, one where fear and courage would meet, where humans and dragons could face each other not as enemies, but as beings capable of understanding. And it all began with a small girl who dared to reach out. The morning sun had melted some of the snow, leaving the mountains glittering under the light. Lena sat near the edge of the cliff, her small hands still tingling from touching the dragon yesterday. She could still feel the warmth of its scales and the gentle hum of its body. The dragon had not left. It stood a little way off, watching her with curious eyes, its massive wings folded carefully against its back. Lena felt no fear. Instead, she felt a strange excitement, like she was about to discover something extraordinary. From the colony below, her parents watched, hearts pounding. They had tried to tell her not to go near the dragons, but Lena did not listen to fear. She had a courage that was pure and simple, and it drew the dragon closer. Slowly, it stepped forward, its claws crunching the ice beneath, and Lena held out her small hands. The dragon lowered its head, massive and terrifying, but gentle. The colony's adults whispered in disbelief. No human had ever seen this happen before. Lena reached for the dragon's snout again. Its glowing white scales shimmered in the sunlight, and its icy blue eyes focused on her with intelligence. She felt the hum vibrating through the ground, a low, steady pulse that seemed alive. The dragon's breath made clouds in the cold air, and Lena giggled, not afraid at all. She touched its horn, feeling the smooth, cold surface, and the dragon leaned closer, letting her explore. Suddenly, a sound came from the mountains behind the dragon. Another massive figure moved in the distance, another albino dragon, larger and older. Its eyes glowed like ice, and it watched the small human girl with careful caution. Lena did not notice the second dragon at first, too focused on the one in front of her. But the dragon she touched nudged her gently and let out a low, soft hum, almost like a warning. Lena laughed and clapped her hands, not afraid of the newcomer. The second dragon stepped closer, moving slower this time. Lena stayed still and reached out her tiny hand again. The dragon lowered its head slightly, curious but cautious. Lena's first touch seemed to reassure it. Slowly, it allowed her to reach out and touch its scales. Her laughter echoed across the cliffs, and the hum from both dragons combined into a low, vibrating sound that felt like music. Below, the colony watched in shock. People whispered to each other, pointing at the mountains. She's touching both of them? No human could do that. It's impossible. Fear and amazement mixed in their voices. For the first time, humans saw the dragons not as monsters, but as creatures capable of being understood. Lena, tiny and fearless, had broken a rule that had existed for generations. The first dragon nudged her shoulder gently, and Lena leaned into it, laughing. She reached for its massive wing and touched the smooth membrane. The dragon did not move away, instead, it flexed the wing slightly, letting her feel the strong, warm muscles beneath the glowing skin. The second dragon did the same, tilting its head as if inviting her closer. Lena's tiny fingers brushed along its scales, feeling the faint vibration of its heartbeat. A sudden roar echoed through the mountains, not angry, not attacking, but deep and resonant. It came from a third dragon, hidden further up the cliffs. Lena froze for a moment, but the two dragons near her nudged her gently, as if saying, "It is safe." Lena reached out again, her small hands touching the scales, and she laughed, full of joy and wonder. The roar echoed back from the mountains, loud but not threatening. It was almost a greeting. The dragons began to circle around her, not in a threatening way, but slowly, carefully, as if learning about her. Lena giggled, feeling the air move from their wings. The sunlight caught on their white scales, making them sparkle like stars. She touched each dragon, moving from one to another, and each one leaned down to meet her small hands. The colony below could hardly believe it. Fear had turned into awe. They were witnessing something no one thought possible, humans and dragons connecting in trust and friendship. Lena's parents finally stepped closer, careful not to scare the dragons. Her father whispered to the colony, "Look at her, she isn't afraid. She understands them." Other humans whispered to each other, their fear slowly changing into wonder. For the first time, they realized humans might not just survive on this planet, they might thrive. Lena had shown them something important: courage and curiosity could bridge the gap between species that seemed impossible to cross. The dragons continued to move around her, gentle and curious, humming softly. Lena laughed and reached for the glowing eyes of the first dragon. Its massive head lowered, allowing her to touch it safely. The dragons were enormous, powerful, and terrifying, but they had accepted her. Her small courage had opened a door that no human had ever dared to open. As the sun climbed higher, the mountains around them seemed less intimidating. The dragons were no longer distant threats, they were beings capable of connection. Lena had shown the humans something extraordinary: even the most feared creatures could be approached with trust and bravery. The colony below watched, learning a lesson that would change their world forever. By midday, Lena sat surrounded by the dragons, laughing and reaching for them. The creatures leaned down, their massive bodies careful not to harm her, their glowing scales reflecting the sunlight like a shining sea. The humans in the colony felt a spark of hope they had never known. One small human girl had faced fear directly, and in doing so, had started a story of courage, trust, and change. The dragons had not attacked. They had not fled. They had accepted her. And in that moment, Lena's small hands proved that humans, even the smallest among them, could be extraordinary. Days passed, and Lena spent every moment near the dragons. The colony watched from afar, keeping distance, but they could see what no human had ever seen before. The dragons were no longer monsters. They were curious, intelligent, and gentle, at least with Lena. She laughed as they nudged her, letting her climb along their massive backs. She touched their glowing scales, ran her small hands along their horns, and even reached the tip of a wing. Every touch was returned with care. The dragons learned from her as much as she learned from them. Her parents were both worried and amazed. They stayed close but let her explore, watching her tiny form as she moved among creatures that could crush her in seconds. "She's so brave," her mother whispered, unable to hide her awe. "I've never seen anything like this." Her father nodded. "It's not just bravery," he said. "She understands them. Somehow, she speaks to them without words." The dragon seemed to sense it too. The first dragon, the largest of the three, began following her everywhere. When Lena sat in the snow, it lowered its head, allowing her to rest on its glowing scales. The other two dragons moved in closer, forming a circle around her. Their hums filled the air, a low, vibrating sound that felt like music to the humans watching. The colony had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying. Fear was still there, but now it was mixed with wonder. Then, a revelation came. Scientists and explorers from the colony began studying the dragons carefully, using sensors and cameras. they discovered that the dragons were not naturally aggressive. They had been fearful themselves, reacting only to the humans' constant attempts to chase them away or control the land. Every roar, every movement, every story of attack had been a misunderstanding. The dragons had lived alone for centuries, guarding their caves and territory. Now, with Lena, they were learning that humans could be trusted. The colony's elders gathered, murmuring among themselves. "It is the child," one said. "Her fearlessness, her trust, it's changed everything." Others nodded. They realized that humans had always relied on strength and caution, but Lena had used something stronger, empathy and courage that came from innocence. A single human had proven that even the most terrifying creatures could be reached without weapons. Lena herself did not understand the importance of what she was doing. She simply played. She climbed along the dragon's massive spines, laughed as their wings brushed against the wind, and spoke softly to them in her small, clear voice. Sometimes she tapped their horns gently. Sometimes she curled up in the snow, leaning against them as if they were her family. The dragons responded, nudging her gently, humming, and circling her protectively. The humans below began to experiment carefully. They sent food for the dragons, chunks of meat, fruits, and minerals, and watched how the creatures responded. Lena would guide them, showing where to place the food, and the dragons followed her instructions. They learned quickly. In the colony's eyes, she was not just a child, she was a teacher, a bridge between species that had never met in trust before. Word spread quickly through the settlement. Families came to watch from a safe distance. Children pointed excitedly. Adults whispered with awe. No human had ever seen such a connection. Fear began to fade, replaced by hope. If Lena could be accepted by the dragons, perhaps humans could live alongside them, not just survive but thrive. The colony started imagining a future that had seemed impossible, humans and dragons together, exploring the mountains, sharing the land instead of fearing it. The dragons themselves began to change. They grew calmer, more confident, and even playful. They would chase each other around the cliffs, always returning to Lena. They nudged her playfully, letting her ride along their backs. They learned gestures and patterns, responding to her touch and voice. The humans in the colony could hardly believe it. What had once been terror had turned into a new understanding. Then came the most surprising moment. The oldest dragon, the largest one, lowered its massive head to Lena's level, and she climbed onto its horn. She laughed as it lifted her slightly, careful not to hurt her. The other dragons circled, watching, hums vibrating through the air like a chorus. Lena's small hands rested on the glowing scales of the dragon's head. At that moment, the humans understood what she had always known instinctively: the dragons were not monsters. They were beings capable of trust, kindness, and even play. For the first time, the colony realized that fear had blinded them. Humans had assumed the dragons were dangerous because they were different. They had assumed strength alone mattered. But Lena had shown them something more powerful: courage, curiosity, and empathy. One human child had achieved what an army of adults could not. One small hand had bridged centuries of fear and misunderstanding. By evening, the dragons settled around Lena as she lay in the snow, exhausted but happy. The humans watched silently, awestruck. The colony understood that this child, small and fearless, had changed their world. The dragons had revealed their true nature, and humanity had begun to shine, not through machines, not through weapons, but through the bravery and heart of one tiny human girl. The sun set behind the jagged mountains, casting long shadows across the snow. Lena lay among the dragons, laughing softly as they hummed around her. The humans below could feel the warmth, the hope, the change. Fear still lingered in the edges of the colony, but it was weaker now, replaced by the spark of possibility. Lena's courage had started a new story, a story of trust, of connection, and of humans being extraordinary in ways no one had imagined. And high above, in the icy caves, more albino dragons watched, curious and silent. The balance between fear and understanding had shifted. The mountains no longer belonged only to the dragons. Humanity had earned a place, guided by a tiny girl with a fearless heart. The sun rose slowly over the jagged mountains, painting the icy cliffs in shades of gold and pink. Lena was already awake, laughing softly as the albino dragons stretched their massive wings above her. She had spent the night nestled among them, safe and warm despite their enormous size. The colony below watched in awe, unable to believe what they were seeing. For the first time, humans and dragons existed together in peace, connected by a single child's courage. Her parents approached cautiously, smiling but still worried. "Lena," her father said gently, "you've shown them we mean no harm. But we must be careful." Lena looked up at him, eyes bright. She understood more than her parents realized. The dragons were not monsters. They were friends. She reached out to the largest dragon, who lowered its glowing head to her level. Lena giggled and patted its smooth scales, and the dragon hummed in reply, a sound like music to the humans watching. The colony slowly began to send humans closer to the dragons. Scientists, explorers, and even children came, keeping a safe distance at first, guided by Lena. She showed them how to approach, how to move calmly, and how to respect the dragon's space. Each time, the dragons responded gently, letting humans touch their scales, feed them, or simply watch. The humans were amazed. What they had once feared was no longer terrifying. Fear had been replaced by trust. The albino dragons, once feared by all, became protectors of the colony. They patrolled the cliffs and caves, warning humans of dangerous storms or landslides. They even helped carry heavy loads across the mountains, their massive strength now an ally instead of a threat. The humans began to explore parts of the planet that had been too dangerous before. Together, humans and dragons discovered hidden valleys, sparkling ice lakes, and caves filled with glowing crystals. Lena's courage had opened the door to a new world. Word spread quickly through the colony. Families told stories of the tiny girl who had changed everything. Children tried to imitate her bravery, though none could quite reach the dragons as Lena had. Adults whispered among themselves about the lessons they had learned. Strength alone was not enough. Bravery, curiosity, and empathy were even more powerful. Humanity had proven that it could face fear, not with weapons, but with trust and heart. The dragons themselves began to change too. They became more social, playful, and even protective of the humans they now trusted. When storms hit the mountains, dragons would herd families to safety. When explorers got lost, dragons would guide them back. They had become partners, allies, and friends. The humans learned to read the dragon's body language, their hums, and the subtle gestures that communicated their feelings. What had once been impossible now felt natural. Lena grew stronger and more confident each day. She climbed higher cliffs, ran across icy fields, and played with the dragons without fear. Her laughter echoed across the mountains, carrying hope to the humans below. She had become a symbol of what humans could achieve. Courage, kindness, and understanding could change even the most dangerous world. The colony began to plan for the future, imagining new buildings, farms, and exploration projects that included dragons as partners. One afternoon, the oldest dragon lowered its massive head, and Lena climbed onto its glowing horn. The dragon lifted her gently, showing her the mountains from above. She laughed as the wind rushed past her face. From that height, she could see the entire colony and the cliffs beyond. She felt powerful, not because of strength, but because she had created a bridge between two worlds. The humans below cheered, and the dragons hummed in harmony. By evening, the colony gathered near the mountains to celebrate. Fires burned, and families shared food while Lena sat among the dragons, waving to everyone. No one spoke of fear. No one whispered of danger. Only awe and gratitude filled the air. The humans understood that the dragons had chosen to trust them because a single human child had dared to reach out. Lena had shown that bravery could overcome fear, and empathy could overcome misunderstanding. The mountains, once dark and forbidding, were now filled with life and possibility. Humans and dragons lived side by side, learning from each other and growing stronger together. Lena's courage had rewritten the rules of the planet. She had taken a world ruled by fear and turned it into a place of hope. Even the oldest dragons, once silent and wary, now hummed joyfully, circling the settlement with protective wings. Night fell, and stars sparkled above the icy cliffs. Lena lay in the snow, surrounded by the glowing dragons. She looked up at the sky and smiled, feeling the warmth of friendship and trust. The colony below watched in silence, hearts full of hope and wonder. Humanity had proven that it could rise above fear, not through power, but through courage and heart. A tiny girl had changed the course of their world forever. And high in the mountains, dragons still moved silently in their caves, watching and listening. They were no longer only creatures of legend and terror. They were allies, protectors, and friends. The balance between humans and dragons had shifted, and a new chapter had begun. The planet, once ruled by fear, was now a place where humans and dragons could live together, exploring, learning, and thriving. Lena smiled as she closed her eyes, her small hand resting on the glowing scales of the dragon beside her. She had faced the impossible, and the world had changed. Courage, innocence, and trust had won. And humanity, small, fragile, but fearless, had proven once again that it could do what no one else could.